This movie only really made one big mistake, but it was a big one, and I want to talk about it, along with my other views on Joker Folie à Deux. Hello, welcome to Culture Filter. I am Phil, and here we talk about all sorts of geeky pop culture, and today I'm doing a movie review. It's been a while since I've done one of those. I've just literally got back from the cinema seeing Joker 2, as I'm going to call it from now on, because I frankly cannot be bothered to say that every time. I just got back from the cinema, and I have some thoughts. I didn't read too many reviews before I went in, because I wanted it to be my own genuine opinion, but I did see a few opinions floating around on places like Twitter, and I have some thoughts about that. I have some thoughts about the use of the word bomb, and how, in the sense of it bombed, and is that really an appropriate word, given the financial situation? And yeah, that issue about what caused its downfall. And also, the fact that actually, it's not actually a bad film. Oh yeah. So let's just start with the film itself. If you liked the first one, as I did, I watched the first one and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised with the first one. Based on the trailer, I've been a bit dubious about the first one, but after watching it, I really enjoyed it. So when they announced a sequel, I was intrigued of what they would do next in this character, because the first one was very sort of dark and gritty and very street level psychological look into this guy Arthur Fleck's head. And that's something that you don't often find in the genre of superhero movies, which this tangentially fits into. There are no actual superheroes around, but it's in that universe. It's in a DCU adjacent universe where they're in Gotham. There are things we find familiar in Gotham. There is Wayne Manor and various other little Easter eggs. We're very much in a version of that world where potentially one day Batman will exist. But he's not there now. So it's a superhero movie without being a superhero movie. Now, Todd Phillips, the director and writer of these, he has said on the record that effectively he has just, he's used the recognisable IP of the Joker to draw people into telling his own original story that he wanted to tell anyway. And that first film probably would have been a little art house, festival circuit film that maybe a few cinemas would have shown, but it wouldn't have got a massively wide release, that, wouldn't have got anywhere near the amount of buzz that it did do because it was a Joker movie. And there are pluses and negatives to that, but I absolutely don't blame Todd Phillips for that. The realistic nature of the business of Hollywood these days is unfortunately relentlessly capitalist, and sadly, if you don't have some kind of IP attached to your property that people recognise, you're not going to get it, either not going to get it made in the first place, or not going to get it promoted enough to get a lot of people bums on seats to watch it. So I absolutely don't blame him for doing that. But effectively, this doesn't need to be a joke story, but it's got those flavours of Gotham and the little references here and there, and it just makes it a bit more interesting, I think, especially with the first one. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers in this first part. I'll tell you if I'm going to, but let's just say that with the second film, it goes in a slightly different direction than maybe some people were anticipating from this. And I'm not talking about the style and stuff yet. That's another thing. We'll come on to that. But just in terms of the direction of the plot, where it goes and where it ends up is maybe not what you would be expecting if you were going into this still thinking it's an origin movie of somebody that's going to go on to be Batman's nemesis. So I can understand why some people might be annoyed at that. If that's what you're going in and expecting, look, that happens. I've been disappointed in things. I've reviewed things in the past, episodes of Doctor Who, which I've gone in thinking will be one thing, and it's turned out to be something completely different. And sometimes that can be a pleasant surprise. Sometimes just you really wanted that first thing so much that you just can't get over that disappointment. And you try, even if you're a level-headed person, you try and at least acknowledge that and go, okay, I don't like that because it wasn't what I was expecting. But it is mainly because it's not what I was expecting, and my expectations were here, and I didn't, it did something completely different, and that wasn't what I was after. So, hey, it's not for me. But that doesn't make it a bad piece of media in itself, just because it wasn't what you were expecting, or what you may have wanted out of it. Personally, I was quite happy with this being in its own separate thing. It's an Elseworlds. This Batman doesn't even have to go on to exist in this universe. Yes, we know there's a young Bruce Wayne from the first one, but so what if he never becomes Batman in this universe? Doesn't bother me at all, because what we're watching is an interesting character examination of this one person and their mental health and the struggles they go through and what's going on in their head. And I think this film continues to do that very well. And one of the ways it does that is with the music. This is the other thing that is just going to be Marmite to some people. You either love it or you hate it. There's lots of very stylistic elements of this film, which, if you are just somebody who doesn't like that particular type of thing, then you're not going to like it, are you? It's it's almost an art house film in the way it's presented, in the way it mixes different elements. I mean, this happens right at the start of the film, so I don't consider it a massive spoiler. At the very beginning of the film, the first thing we see is a little animated cartoon sequence, completely setting us up from the very start that this is going to be in a way, very different film to the first film, because it's got a completely different style to it. It's doing these slightly quirky things, very abstracty things, very, like I say, sort of almost art housey type things. Feels like, in that sense, a very independent art housey festival circuit movie where they're trying, doing surreal things, really diving into the characters that way. Which, while the first film definitely was a very character-focused thing, it was very grounded. This one is kind of almost taken away the grounded, but not completely, because there's a lots of scenes in it which are still very grounded and echo back to that first film. But then you get the bits that kind of go into, effectively, Arthur Fleck's head, and you see his developing psyche through these animations, through, the animation at the start, through the songs, and things like that. So let's talk about the songs. The songs, again, I am somebody who enjoys a musical, enjoys a good musical at least. I have not enjoyed musicals as well when they've been bad. Looking at you, Doctor Who, wasn't even a proper musical. But one criticism, I can't remember where I saw it. I can't remember if I saw it on Twitter or if I saw a video. I can't remember. I saw somebody express the opinion that the songs are just kind of there and don't move the plot forward. And I think their justification for this was something like, it a song will break out and Arthur Fleck will be singing and he'll be moving around doing a bit of dancing and stuff, and then suddenly it'll cut and it will have all been in his head and he would have stood there. So nothing that we saw actually happened. It was all inside his head. And I think they were saying that means it didn't advance the plot at all. But I would say it absolutely did advance the plot. Just because nothing happened in the real world, plot isn't just physical things happening. In all of those moments where we get a song that happens inside Arthur Fleck's head, that is a moment of change for that character. So he is changing, he is shifting his point of view slightly, and you can see that if you contrast how he is before the song and after the song, and the song is the journey in his head of how he gets from that place to that place. So they absolutely are relevant to the plot. They absolutely are key moments, and they do advance the plot. So I don't agree with the argument that they're just songs that pop up and they're meaningless and they don't advance the plot at all. They serve a purpose. Now, do I like the individual songs? They're okay. They're nothing special, to be honest. It's nothing I'm going to buy the soundtrack of. It's nothing I'm coming out humming. Yeah, they're not terrible songs, but some of them are quite nice. They're all kind of samey as well. They all have this sort of same thing, but their purpose within the story, they fit. They work in the story. They're not amazing songs in themselves, but within the story, they work. So, yes, you've got people going, oh, I didn't like it because it's nothing like the first one, and they've done all this weird stuff, and I don't like musicals. Well, okay, yeah, if you don't like any, if you're absolutely adamant you don't like any songs in movies, you're probably not going to like this. But that's not, don't be fooled into thinking everyone thinks like you, and everyone who liked the first one doesn't like songs in films at all, because people have broad spectrums of what they like. I like lots of things. I like dark and gritty films, and I like a musical occasionally as well. A mixture of things. I like a bit of everything. So I think as long as it works, and as long as it's done well, and it serves the story, which I think it does here, I think, yeah, make it a musical. Why not? Do something different with it. So that didn't bother me at all, and I found myself really gripped by the story, especially once it got to the sort of halfway point. From then on in, the first half was okay. The second half, I was actually found myself quite gripped by it. In terms of the performances, Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic, as he was in the first one. He won an Oscar for the first one. So, that kind of performance, it's sort of similar. He goes on a slightly different journey with this one, but he's still doing a stellar performance with it. Absolutely no notes there. With Lady Gaga, I had never seen her act before. I know she's been in films, but I've never seen any of them. I like her music, generally. But I would say she was fine. She wasn't bad. There was nothing in it that, took me out of it, or I thought she did a perfectly fine job in the role. She wasn't anything that blew me away. She wasn't anything I think, oh, you deserve an award for that. She was just okay. I thought her story was interesting as well. Did I like this as much as the first one? No. I think the first one, for me, is a better film. This one is an enjoyable follow-up. It's fine. And as a duology, they work really well together. That's not to say there isn't somewhere it could go with a little thing at the end, which we'll talk about in a minute when I get to spoilers, but overall, okay. Now let's talk about the fact that it's bombed, as all of the press seems to be saying, and Hollywood generally seems to be saying. And I think I couldn't put this any better than there's a magazine called Film Stories, and the guy that publishes that magazine there's a Film Stories YouTube channel, and occasionally he puts some videos on there talking about film topics. So go look that up if you want to see it, but I'll link it below as well. There's a video where he talks about the language of using bomb for something that is going to make a profit. It's not going to lose Warner Brothers money. This is still going to make a profit for them. It just didn't make it all back in opening weekend, which is a funny thing to call a bomb just because it didn't make all of its money back in opening weekend. I think, we need, and as Simon points out in his video, we need to reframe the language on that, because, bomb should be reserved for something that loses money, not for something that it just doesn't do as well as expected. That's a whole nother issue, but related to the thing I was talking about at the top of the video, where the big mistake this movie made wasn't making it a musical, wasn't doing any of that sort of stuff, making it a slightly different genre almost to the first film. That's a tangential thing. That's a little thing, effectively, that, you can make films for different audiences as long as the budget fits. And that is the big mistake this film made. The first film, quite a relatively low to mid-budget film. I think it was 70 million. This one, 200 million, I believe, was the figure. And that's before marketing. So you're probably looking at 400 million total cost to make and market the film. Huge increase on the first film. And partly that's salaries. Everyone took a massive pay rise. The star and the director did. And obviously, I'm guessing getting Lady Gaga probably cost a bit too. Was that worth it? Maybe not. Maybe you could have just got someone else that can sing. I don't know. Clearly her star power did not bring in the audience. So, and like I say, she was fine. But so would have somebody else have been. So maybe you didn't need Lady Gaga. Maybe you didn't need to spend so much money on her. So spending so much money is the biggest issue for this film. Because if this had been a film budgeted around about the same cost as the first film, and barely anything else had changed, maybe some of the set pieces got a little bit smaller, but that's it. The plot, having songs, everything else could have stayed the same, but just smaller. That would have been fine. The amount of money this has taken would have been almost its budget already, because I think it made 40 million in America on the opening weekend. How well it's done worldwide, I'm not sure, but that would have been fine. So its biggest mistake is that it just, this thing of Hollywood always having to up itself, always having to go, wow, we did this amount on the next one needs to be bigger. It doesn't always have to be bigger. You can make a film the same size as the previous film, and that is fine. And that is what they should have done with this, because it worked in the first one. Make a relatively low to mid-budget movie, and if it does well, great. If it doesn't do as well, well, you haven't got as far to go to reach that threshold. That is the biggest mistake this film made. Sorry, I've been a bit croaky. I've got a cold. I'm going to go rest my voice now. What did you think of this film? Did you like it? Have you seen it? If you haven't seen it, are you going to go see it? Don't give an opinion on the film without telling me if you've seen it or not, because I will have much more respect for somebody that has seen it and has judged it, even if they don't like it, than somebody who is just basing it off of what they've heard about it. So by all means, you can put your opinion on whether or not you want to see it, and why, but come on. I mean, if you're going to offer an actual, this is a rubbish film opinion, at least watch it first. Yeah. Oh, I might do some more movie reviews soon. It kind of depends if I feel like I've got anything to talk about when I come out of the cinema. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.